Now it's time to answer a question submitted by you. Today's question comes from Reagan. Reagan asks, how should I pick my first car? What do I even look for? Reagan, this is a great question, and I am honored that you trust me with this question. For any of you who heard episode 3 of the podcast, the episode that was about prudence in the first 4 pilot episodes, you know that my relationship with choosing cars has been questionable at best. Now, I'm instead of coming at this from a car expert, I'm going to come at this from someone who has made a lot of mistakes. And my answer to you is don't make the same mistakes I did. First and foremost, don't end up a victim to car fever and rush into making decisions because you're so hungry to pick a car. Next, and possibly more importantly, stay out of car debt. Do not get a car loan, especially for this first car. Car loans and the amount of interest that you're going to end up paying on them, even if you got like a 0 down or a low interest rate, that amount of money that you're paying in interest is going to be handicapping your future. The opportunity cost that you have with a car loan can very well result in a secure and cushy financial future, a healthy retirement, if you will. So let's not start by getting behind the 8 ball. Let's save up for something that is reasonable in cash. Now, when I was getting my first car, that was something between $3,000 and $5,000. Inflation and the way that used car prices are now, that's probably not going to be enough. You're going to want to be focusing somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. And if you're in high school, you're working a job, you can easily save that much money up in order to get your first car. I believe in you. So give yourself a budget, save up, and then I want you to consider the wants that you have for your car. I don't know what you want for your first car. Do you want a pickup truck? Do you want an SUV? Do you want a sedan? Do you want a coupe? Do you want a hatchback? Do you want a wagon? Do you want one of those square Scion things with tiny, tiny wheels and excellent fuel economy? It looks like this. You got to think of make, model, size, and age. You got to think of the mileage on these vehicles, and you got to ask yourself what kind of features you expect your first car to have. It might be that you just need something that gets you from A to B, but you might not want a super ugly color if you can help it. And if I were to do it all over again, I would consider everything I wanted in a vehicle, and maybe some things that I would accept in a vehicle, and I'd write them all down in a list. I'd say, this is everything that I could possibly want in my first car. Then I want you to take that list and do some research on different vehicles that could possibly fit most of your wants. On this podcast, we talk about frugality, the intentional practice of prudent economy. When it comes to economy, we want to maximize our happiness or utility per dollar spent, saved, or given. And one of the best ways I know how to do that is follow the 80-20 rule, roughly. I want you to try to pick something that has about 80% of the wants that you wrote down, and the rest of them get left behind. They get left on the table as a trade-off in order to get something that costs 20% of your otherwise dream car that would have everything you wanted and then some. Okay, we've got ourselves a budget. We have an idea of what kind of car we're looking for. What do we do next? What do we look for next? We avoid the mistakes that I made when I bought junky lemon cars that were prone to failure and being unreliable. Now, in order to figure out what kind of vehicle is going to be reliable and which one is going to be a clunker that sucks up all of your income with repairs at the mechanic, we need to find easy to understand, reliable sources that have done their homework in a way that helps us make the most informed, the most prudent decision possible. And for me, that is this website, carcomplaints.com. I almost died when I found this website after buying so many cars that just fell apart on me. I'll give you an example here while we have the website up. If you're watching the video, I'm going to go ahead and show you, I think it's the second car that I ended up having. It was a Volkswagen, and it was a Volkswagen Passat. You see the numbers on this website. They count the number of issues. There's only one other car that Volkswagen made that was worse than the Passat, and that was the Jetta. So if I click on it and I find the year on here that I owned, I gotta hit this little arrow and scroll. I could have gotten a worse year. I guess 2003 was the worst year to get a Passat, according to this website. But I had a 2002, and if I click on it, it gives me a list of the common complaints, and I can do some research, but conveniently, they give this avoid like the plague stamp up here in the corner. And that tells me just do not do it. There's also a warning here that says donate your Volkswagen Passat. It's time to move on. Donate your car in minutes. They got a little thing that you can click here to donate. Don't click there. I'll show you one other thing on this website that I think is really cool. They have a list of the worst vehicles that you can buy, but they also have a list of the best vehicles that you can buy when it comes to reliability. Here they organize the best vehicles by make and then the model. You can see Toyota has a huge list of vehicles that have been healthy and reliable used purchases. So if you were, say, wanting a small Toyota and you were looking at something that was a little older with good miles, you could click on this Toyota Echo. Now, that's not to say that I'm saying, get this car. I'm not sponsored by anything in that regard. But when you pick one and you're trying to do research on it, you can do this. You go to the main page for the car that you're thinking about and hit complaints. Now, the complaints that they list are going to be from the most frequent to the least frequent. And the top here is body and paint problems. I personally don't care about that. I'm concerned about things that are going to be a reliability problem, not a cosmetic problem. Next is the AC or heater. So if you were looking at this, you might check the AC or the heater, make sure it blows really cold air, make sure that it heats up, crank it all the way down, crank it all the way up if you're test driving. There's brake problems, look at the brakes, maybe have your mechanic look at it and see if the brakes are falling apart at all. I myself have had brakes fail on me on the highway. It's not fun. Next, there's a fuel system problem and a light problem. And if you needed more information as to what you're looking for, it's fuel hesitation. And you can click on it and dig into the actual specifics. It'll tell you what average mileage this particular issue shows up. And they're going to do that with every possible problem you'll run into with cars. To recap, be prudent, gather information, gather knowledge, figure out what the common issues are for the cars as you narrow them down and you start to go look at them, you start to test drive them, see them in person, and ask yourself, are these cars victims to their common issues, even if they're arguably reliable cars on the whole? And if you do all that, you're going to be able to move forward and purchase your very first car with confidence and purchase a car that hopefully doesn't become a headache for you down the road. Reagan, I hope that answer was helpful to you, and I hope it was helpful to all of you listening. And if you have a question that you would like answered on the podcast, leave them in the comments below if you're watching on one of the video platforms. And if you're not, you can always go to the HopeFilled Financial website, hopefilledfinancial.com, scroll to the bottom, and there's a little form where you can type up a question and send it to me. And I'll be sure to answer it as a part of a show in the future.